from the Quran, without which the concept of caliphate would probably not exist. Whether it applies or does not apply, that is up to the speakers to find out. Then I will be brief in my opening remarks, about 5 minutes, and then we'll go from there. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم وليمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم وليبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون به شيئا ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون. Translation by Pixel. Allah has promised such of you as believe and do good work that He will surely make them to succeed the present rulers in the earth, even as He caused those who were before them to succeed others, and that He will surely establish for them their religion which He hath approved for them, and will give them in exchange safety after their fear. They serve me. They ascribe no things as partners unto me. Those who disbelieve henceforth, they are the miscreants. This is verse 24:55, which is often quoted by people who argue on behalf of the Caliphate. So this was appropriate to start off. This is our second conference. We tackle some of the tough issues that are facing Muslims in the world, and as luck would have it, every time it is young men with guns who dictate the agenda. So last year, our conference was on Islamophobia in the UK on the 25th of May, and on the 22nd of May, a Nigerian Muslim shot a soldier in a village in broad daylight. That affected our conference in a negative way. There was a very fearful mentality among the Muslims for a backlash, Islamophobia backlash, but that gave us the right context. And this year we chose the topic in May, and we did not know that there would be some young men with guns who will actually establish a kind of caliphate out in Iraq. So we have either been lucky or very unlucky that we have had events overtake us as we have prepared for the conferences. And now don't ask me about the topic for next year, because that will give people ideas, you know. Our strategy is to engage with people from all different thoughts and all different ideas. In the next 100 years, QeRN stands for century, the word QeRN, which is the name of our organization. In the next 100 years, we are not going to live without religion, and in the next 100 years, we are not going to be able to live without secular and modern thought. So the two have to go hand in hand, and the two have to get together, and I've, alhamdulillah, been very successful in bringing people, and thank you very much to the speakers for coming here from all different schools of thought. I come here with an open mind. I don't have any set agenda, and I am here to learn from all of you. And whether we agree or we don't agree with someone, their analysis, their facts, and their point of view is very important for us, because younger generation and other people are looking to us to be able to analyze this and give them a way to think forward. So this is our agenda for today. There's a slight change to the order. Just before the break, we will try to, my daughters Sarah and Barbara were outside, insisted that they wanted to give their point of view as well, because they are the targets of this thing. So if we have time, we will squeeze their 10-minute presentation in. And I have requested, at Munir Saab's request, I have requested Dr. Naveen to be the keynote speaker at the end of the program. Thank you, Munir Saab, and thank you, Professor Hadaf, for accepting. You will have ample time. And we have 2 question-answer sessions, one before the break and one right after the break. Please, you have pens, you have notes, take notes, ask questions. They will all become part of the proceedings, and people will hear you all over the world. And we'll have another question-answer session at the end of the program, around 5:30 p.m. And if you have any pressing questions, approach me, and I will schedule a short question answer after each speech. Okay? So this is wireless, this mouse and this keyboard. I would like to now invite Dr. Tahir Qazi Sahib to come and give us his presentation. He will be, he's going to lay the groundwork. He will cover a lot of topics and he will give the entry points for the other presentations to follow. Dr. Sahib.
Hello everybody. My name is Tahir. I come from Niagara Falls, New York. I'm a simple medical doctor, but somehow I end up with this topic, and for all good and bad, I think Akbar is responsible. As you know, that events have overtaken, and the idea of Caliphate, on the other hand, it is a very old idea that has been running through the Islamic history and theology for centuries. And rightly so, I think it's a contradiction of our time that we are forced to talk about Caliphate as an institution. And let's remember, this is 21st century, it's the age of globalization, it's an age of modernization, it's an age of secularism, and within this context now, when we talk about Caliphate, it should represent something in the collective psyche of the Islamic countries, Islamic societies. And what it is when we look at the Islamic world, there is a certain amount of disenfranchisement. And idea of Caliphate to be reborn, in my mind, as I understand it, it presents as a counterweight to that disenfranchisement. And I will come to the idea of disenfranchisement a little later, but the real idea is that any social type of institution, it is blended with 2-3 different types of forces and dimensions. And you look at the idea of Caliphate, it is blended in history, in culture, in theology. And when I say the word history, I mean the economic history, the social conditions along the spectrum of modernization where a certain society stands, and some societies obviously would be forward than the other. So regardless, it's a blend of all of these various types of forces. I'll come to the disenfranchisement a little later, but I should point out that there are 2 or 3 things. One is, I think there is a historic nostalgia in the minds of Muslims, and as a result, what they are looking for is a particular quote-unquote a Muslim identity in an age of disenfranchisement. And as to the question of Caliphate, it is not that it came to be known without much of the previous history or without any previous theological background. Surah Nur, you heard the recitation of the verse. What it says is, Allah has promised, and there is concept of land, there is concept of inheritance, there is constant concept of authority, establishment of authority of the religion. So all of the blend that later on unfolds in the form of history, all those things are there in this verse. Even though intellectuals, they differ on the interpretation of this particular verse, regardless, all of the following history, whatever the way it is unfolded, whatever the way it is interpreted or reinterpreted, you find it in this particular verse. And with that, a simplified form that as the way it appears on the internet and in the understanding of ordinary people is the, I have used a definition of Caliphate and Caliph and Caliphate from Wikipedia, and the reason I chose this one, all of the youngsters, they go to the internet and search the easiest way, even though it's not one of the highest accepted definition of Caliph and Caliphate. and yet it represents something common within the general population. So head of the state of a caliphate, and it is the caliph is the title of a ruler of an Ummah Islamic community, quote unquote, ruled by the by Sharia or the law. And there are people, those who would say that there was no Sharia at the time of Prophet, but regardless, Sharia represents a body of law on the basis of which various kind of decisions are made. And with that, we come to the question of history. Okay. Question of history. And history, it contains religion, and religion is unfolded in the form of history. And therefore, this particular slide I added for the young folks in particular to make them conceptually clear that there are two types of religions. One religion is called the religion of theology, and the other one is the religion of history. Not necessarily in the course of history, the two types of religions are the same. But the reality of the matter is, religion of theology is so abstract, and the religion of history that unfolds in the practical actions of the human beings on the basis of their own interpretation of whatever the divine is. It takes a form which is more real in life, and it takes a form which is more influential in the due course of time to make the future history. And therefore, I hold it very important the way Muslims are behaving and the way the countries are behaving, the way Muslim communities are behaving, because that is going to cast a shadow onto the future. This is something that I really wanted to emphasize for the youngsters. And this type of idea, it is not a new one. This type of idea, that the way the religion has been interpreted in history, Ibn Khaldun, in his famous The Muqaddimah, he says, this is a too busy slide, I don't like to make too busy slides, but bear it with me. The way he has interpreted the history of the past, it is the duty of the ruler, the political authority that causes the masses to act as required by the intellectual insight, and he has also the means of furthering their worldly interests. But look at the last part of it. Caliphate means to cause the masses to act as required by religious insight into their interests in the other world as well as in this world. This is something extremely important to understand. He interpreted history from the past, but at the same time, if we take his description as a prescription for the future, I guess we would certainly be missing something. And those of us, those who understand that religion has not, Quran has nothing to do with the institution of caliph or caliphate, but the reality is that that's how it got unfolded. So this was a little bit on the background. Now I want to come to the real point, what I want to say, and that is, if Muslims are very keen on establishing a caliphate, there has to be a good reason for that. And what is that good reason? And before the reason, I guess the question of Muslims thinking about caliphate should be clear, because it provides an answer to something, and that question is question of the contemporary world and the contemporary society. But before we get there, another very important question comes to my mind, and that is caliphate for what? Caliphate for the question, would caliphate be able to solve the identity crisis in the Muslim world? That's one question that comes to my mind. The second question that comes to my mind is, will one caliphate be workable in all of the countries, Muslims who are spread across the globe in various different countries? Would it be a workable model? The next question that comes to my mind is, we know in Islamic history there is a huge sectarian divide that has never been bridged, and would one caliphate be able to bridge the gap? That's a question. But with that, let's come to a conclusion of disenfranchisement that I referred to earlier. So what is the kind of disenfranchisement and what are the perils in the Muslim history right at this moment? One is obviously material poverty. There is definitely intellectual stagnation as well, and there is political weakness in addition to all of the other things. Okay, let's sort of move. Okay, let me point out some real problems for which we think of Caliphate as the prospective answer. And that is, look at the world in reality. Muslims, they constitute approximately 23% of the world population right at this moment. Muslims, they are 1.6 billion in number, and their total GDP is 5.3 trillion US dollars. And compare it with Europe, 500 million population, and their GDP is 16.5 trillion dollars US. And Muslims, they are distributed in Muslim majority countries are approximately, I believe, 49. Am I correct on that? 49 Muslim majority countries?
53.
53. Well, I'm a little bit behind the rest of the world.
About there.
So, out of that, I was doing a calculation the other day, and I was adding up some numbers. I'm not very good at math, so pardon me for that. But 22 countries, they are in least developed or in the low-income countries. This represents approximately 45%, 47% of the total. So this is a problem. And to continuing with the problem of the same kind of understanding, I want to make it very clear. That this kind of material stagnation to the Muslim world, it did not happen as a single event. It was through a continuous process of history, as a result of which Muslims ended up at this point where they are materially weak, intellectually stagnant, and politically weak as well. Again, looking at the same thing from in a historical perspective, on the eve of World War I, Istanbul, it was one of the highest paid cities in the whole empire. And even that one, when you compare it with Europe, the wages of unskilled workers, they were much less. In London, it was 2.7 times higher compared with Istanbul. Amsterdam, 90%, and Paris, 60%. So this kind of history, when came to Muslims in the political sense, you know that the model of governance in old times between Muslims and the Christians, it was not much different from each other. There was a prince, there was a public, there was an emir, there was for lack of a good word, general people. And similar kind of model was in Europe too. But there was a point, the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, it proved to be a turning point when the concept of separation between the church and the state became the ruler for the day-to-day affairs of the respective societies. And that gave birth to an idea called social contract, and obviously there was an evolutionary concept as well. But this is one of the definitions of social contract, that the authority of ruler to be limited. And that kind of limitation and the rights of public and the rights of ruler both got defined. This kind of understanding, it was relatively limited in the Muslim world. For youngsters, I must point out that this is only one aspect of social contract. It bears many connotations, and there is much long philosophical debate on this subject. So anybody who's interested in social contract from youngsters, I would be happy to talk to them afterwards. And finally, there is one more point that I wish to draw your attention to. Okay, let's leave it at that. The point that, that's okay, that's okay. The point that two types of thinking now in the evolutionary sense it prevailed. One was the top-down model of governance. There is a God, and God appointed people, those who are ruling the ordinary people, versus there is another idea that over the course of history, and we are in Canada right now, and in the Europe, in Americas, another type of idea of who is the sovereign. So is the model is sovereign, the top-down model, are we the people of the sovereign, and therefore there is a bottom-up model, and Muslims to a great degree, they are still sticking to the idea of caliphate, which is most definitely a top-down model. And not only the Muslims, the rulers, let's look at it purely from the ruler's standpoint, they would find the idea of God-given rights as very convenient. Because in the course of statecraft, they would have to work in terms of using their authority, their power to take some rights away, to punish people and here and there, and therefore to do all that they need legitimacy. And the legitimacy could be best assured if there is something higher up, a supernatural force that's providing you legitimacy. And therefore, caliphate, in the caliphate model, it would be in the best interest of caliphate that they invoke spirituality and the divine rights for themselves. How much time do we have?
You can finish it.
Yeah, okay, I'll be very quick. So they wanted to blend the idea of spirituality with their mundane powers so that the need of legitimacy could be overcome. And this legitimacy in the modern secular democracies, it comes from the people as opposed to the olden time rulers, those who sought their legitimacy from the divine and from the top. Comes to my mind very quickly, December 25, 800, when ruler, the emperor Charlemagne, he knelt at the altar and the Pope crowned him, and therefore the nexus between the church and state got established, and that kind of nexus it continued for centuries. And I want to point to you, just before French Revolution, there was, when the crises were building up and people were asking for their rights, the president of the Parliament, he declared on behalf of King Louis XVI, and he said, and this is his exact words, these principles, universally accepted by the nation, testify that sovereign power in his kingdom belongs to king alone. That, and mark these words, that he is accountable only to God for the exercise of supreme powers. I'll forego a few of the other points, but I want to tell you this. And he said the legislative powers reside in the person of the sovereign who had blessing from the top, and these, sirs, are invariable principles of the French monarchy. When he said that, even though he was purely addressing Catholic Christian system, but it also sounds very well in the Muslim thought also, because those were the exact principles on the basis of which Muslim thought has been evolving. And again, what it did was, the only thing that it did was it provided the legitimacy to the ruling authorities. With that in mind, let me point to you that social contract that got established in the Christian society over the course of time, somehow it never took roots in either philosophical form, in the political form, or even in the form of justice in the Muslim authorities. And now let's quickly move to, well, I coined this one word, the spiritualization of politics. All that what I've been talking was virtually was spiritualizing the politics. And this spiritualization in the real course of history, it came to be interpreted in the form of theology of caliphate, for which various sects or various denominations of Muslims, they did interpretation of Quran and all of the history according to their own ideas, including our Shiite friends who recently they came up with the idea of Walayat Faqih. So, as we said, that Ibn Khaldun has interpreted history in a certain way, and I believe a great scholar who I respect a lot, Maulana Maududi Sahab, when he is talking about Caliphate, it was not much different from what Ibn Khaldun had interpreted too long ago. Maulana Maududi Sahab, he has written very extensively on this subject in his book Caliphate Mulukiyat in Urdu. And how should it be translated in English? Caliphate Mulukiyat?
Caliphate and monarchy.
That's right. That's right. So he has talked about theology in a great detail and scholarly man as he was. And I was a lucky one when he was alive. I was in Lahore in that time and got the chance to listen to him quite a number of times. And unlucky in a way, because I was prevented from going too close to him, because his student organization, Islami Jamiyat-e-Talaba, they somehow never liked me, and I was in few troubles as well, to say the least. But regardless, I'm impressed with his intellect. And when he is talking about a ruler, I have picked, just for sake of brevity, only two things from his book. And the duties of ruler, as he defines, to command people to be obedient to God's edicts and prevent sinful behavior. And secondly, to administer hudud punishments imposed by God. So these are the translations. I have to admit, these are mine. I read it in Urdu and translated it all by myself. And why did I translate it in this fashion? That's a little bit, beyond this talk. I would be happy to talk to anybody on this subject. But it also brings up, the duty of the ruler to make them act according to the God's commandments, and also to impose punishments. To some degree, this is what the theology of Caliphate has been. And the theological discourse of Muslims and within Muslim societies, when I look at them, unfortunately, I have to say that it is very parochial and very limited to the theology only. And the real questions of the illiteracy, the poverty, the GDP, all of the material things, they somehow go missing in this debate, and therefore we don't get to any right conclusion. Now let me tell you that the duties of ruler to establish morality, and to himself obviously supposed to be the nicely behaving person, but this is something absolutely different where we look at modern constitutionalism, where the duties of the ruler is to manage our mundane affairs, as opposed to being a guardian for our morality. We want religion to be in everybody's person, in everybody's heart, but the state has no responsibility towards establishing a religious-based morality. And with that in mind, what I'm saying is, let me move on. I think this is a slide which I want everybody is my principal message. In the broadest course of history, we have moved from the basic concept of sacred to the secular. And I'm very confident by looking at the European experience, the American experience, we are able to manage our worldly affairs in a very secular manner. And as to your being sacred, keep your spirituality within yourself. A personal religion, secular does not say you give up your personal religion. You do whatever you want in your personal affairs, but in the community and the sense of society, it has to be secular, and there has to be a separation between the church and state. And the future of Caliphate, we have talked about it. So I have, you like it, this is a little bit too much. Qazi's method. I'm not the first one. You know, in the morning when Nuzhat Gaddafi told me, even Karl Marx said that. So what are you talking? So the point is, the world is composed of real facts, and those are the facts that steer history. Some people, on the other hand, they are of the view it is only ideology that steers history. I respectfully beg to differ from that. And when I'm saying the real facts, they steer history, I mean to say there are two determinants of social stability or instability that we have already talked that contributed to our disenfranchisement. One is demography and the other one is geography. The Muslims, as the Muslims, when they want to establish a caliphate, I'm honestly not sure how would they be able to overcome the geographic parallels. I do not know, because there is no consensus as yet. But on the other hand, instability that's going to be in the future of the Muslim societies, that's going to be partly going to come from this particular factor, that in 2010, the population is 1.6 billion, in 2030 it's going to be 2.2 billion, or 35% increase. And as a student of revolutions, I know that wherever there have been a population surge, 2 generations down the road, there have been some sort of unrest, anarchy, or revolution. And therefore, Muslim population that's generally going to come from the poor countries, how would they be able to stabilize a social system to be able to absorb that kind of population surge? I do not see any practical point in the mind as yet. And with that, the possibility that in the Muslim countries, the disenfranchisement that we talked earlier, it's going to be more prevalent in the future. And caliphate and theological discourse alone is not going to be sufficient to solve those practical problems in the Muslim countries. So the only option is, in my mind, if we are so keen on using our terminology for historic and cultural reasons, why not call it a secular caliph? And the secular caliph, you know, it would be the antithesis of traditional caliph, but it would represent more of the liberal democratic model that we have come to live in and experience. Now, the caliphate that got established in Iraq right now as a result of the breakdown of the state system over there, if that kind of breakdown is going to happen in other societies too, I believe, you know, that's a very bad sign. And comes to my mind Alexander Hamilton about 2.5 centuries ago, who pointed out whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accidents and force. I guess these are the words of Hamilton, which represent a very dire warning for the Muslim population for the future if they go the way of the accidents to establish themselves. And I stand with Alexander Hamilton on that, and that's my conclusion too, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you so very much.